Hello, my friends, and welcome. And Shelley, hello. It's been an interesting week. So, if you don't know, Shelley is Shelley Swearingen. She's got a great channel. And we are co hosting the Eclectic Bookclub, where we read an eclectic book each and every month. And this month we're reading through the Odyssey by Homer. And I just finished book 19 today. So I've got about 5 left to go because it goes through 24. And yeah, so gearing up to be able to finish late in the week at a book a day. And last week, Shelley asked a question about the influences of the Odyssey. She mentioned the Hobbit as being very episodic, just like the Odyssey, and giving a similar vibe and being inspired by the Odyssey, and asked what other works of literature can you think of that are influenced by this? And that's a really, really hard question to answer because one could argue that almost everything that has any kind of adventure, any kind of a heroic journey or quest, has at least some influence from the Odyssey, if not directly, then by association. Because even if you've never read the Odyssey, you've read works undoubtedly that are inspired by the Odyssey. And so that author was probably directly influenced by it. And so even the authors today, if they've never read this, but are churning out stories that are similar in approach and feel and episodic nature and quests and journeys and monsters and gods and any of those things, they, whether they know it or not, they owe to the Odyssey. And that's part of what makes it exciting to explore this old work of the Western canon, is because it does have such a far-reaching effect. And I sat for a good long time trying to think of specific examples. And it's difficult to do because it's just so immersed in everything. So I want to know if you have some specific examples other than The Hobbit, because that was the one that came to mind for me too. I would love to hear them. There's elements of it in works like Beowulf, in the Le Morte d'Arthur. It's got influences in things like Count of Monte Cristo and Three Musketeers and their episodic nature. It has lots and lots of influence throughout fantasy as a whole genre, because, again, it influenced Tolkien, who then influenced a lot of what became fantasy. So sorry, Shelley, I don't have a great answer because that's a tough one to give an answer to because it is just so enmeshed. It would be like pouring yourself a bowl of cereal and then pouring in the milk and trying to say, well, where's the milk? And trying to isolate just what is milk in that bowl. Could you do it with a lot of time? Sure. With some special tools? Yeah. But without extra assistance, it would be difficult to do because it just all kind of works together. The same thing is true with any kind of cooking. You make a batch of cookies. You start with all those individual ingredients. Once you blend them together, you can no longer separate those ingredients. It's just so enmeshed in there. That's probably an even better example than the cereal with the milk. So you've just got so much that's in there together, and it's all intermixed, and there's no way to pull it apart without ruining the entire thing. But what I wanted to talk about with the Odyssey, first, my reaction on reaching the second half of this, which is where I've reached in the last week, it stops being about Odysseus on his adventure, and it's Odysseus at home, in disguise, but at home on his island. I think it's Ithaca. And the interactions with people that he knows, that he loves, that he trusts, that knew him in disguise, thanks to the goddess Athena, who tells him to be the devious one, to go and work your way slowly through, which is interesting because when I think of the Odyssey, I what comes to mind first are the adventures that he goes on, the things that he sees, and those are a very small portion of the book. It's not even half the book, because the first couple of chapters are Odysseus' wife and his son, and how they're handling things at home, and the suitors, and seeking news of Odysseus. So it's very, very interesting that what I think of first and foremost with the Odyssey is such a small piece of it, and that's the actual adventures and him going and encountering fantastical beasts and monsters. I mean, the sirens is a very notable thing, and it's one of, I think, 3 things that are jam-packed into one chapter. So it doesn't even merit its own full dealing in there. So it's interesting to me that it's kind of split up that way. And so it's curious to see Odysseus back at home and dealing with his interactions with people that don't know him. So far, he's only revealed himself to one person, and that's his son. And that was only after his son saw him and interacted with him in his disguise as an old beggar. And he obviously it makes sense that he's doing it because he's able to interact with people and see how they remember him, how they're treating things, and basically knowing who he needs to clean house with once he does take back over. Is my son still a good man? Is my swineherd still loyal to me? How is my wife handling all of this? Where is her heart at through all of these years that I've been away? Is there anything redeeming about any of these suitors that are here? Or should they all just be punished for this? The maids and the other servants are they loyal, or are they just here to collect a quick buck and willing to turn on whoever? And so he's trying to unravel all of this before he unleashes on everyone that deserves justice and vengeance. And I have a feeling that is very, very soon to happen. And it's exciting. But the question I wanted to pose to all of you is this. So the Odyssey is very, very episodic in nature. And even when there's the cohesive narrative that overarches it's broken into little smaller interactions, little smaller quests and journeys and adventures and excitement. Not only while he's sailing and deals with things like the Cyclops and the sirens and the cattle, but also when he's at home, his interactions with the swineherd, with his son, with his dog, with his wife, with the suitors, with his old nursemaid. And you see a little bit of Odysseus and of those people in those interactions, or in the adventure with the monsters in the other half of the interactions. And so if you were tasked or inspired to write a short story or a poem based off of one of the adventures or interactions in the Odyssey, writing ability aside, so if you're not a writer, that's okay. You can still participate. You can still give an answer. I'm not expecting you to churn out a 5,000 word story in response to this, although I'd love to see that and read that. But what would you pick up the pen to write in story or poem and give your own retelling of it, your own version of it, your own spin on it? Arthurian literature gets this all the time. You see more modern people go back and retell the same story, but in their own way. Give it their own twist, their own emphasis, make it more modernized for a more modern audience, whatever the case may be. Which is very different than just a translation. It's allows you to explore in greater depth if you choose, or in a more abridged version in some cases. But which of these episodic things from the Odyssey would you choose to explore, and why? For me, it would probably be his encounter with the Cyclops. As easy of an answer as that is, it is absolutely a very memorable book in here. The capturing of Odysseus and his crew by the Cyclops, the torment while they're captured of him eating some of the crew members, and Odysseus tricking the Cyclops by blinding him first. And then when asked who it is, he's given the name of, I'm nobody. And so the Cyclops is bellowing out in rage, asking for help. Nobody's attacking me. Nobody's trying to escape. And everybody around the Cyclops is laughing because they don't catch on that nobody is the name of somebody that's been given. And so Odysseus being all clever and showing that he's got that wit, but then the prideful arrogance afterwards of Cyclops, Odysseus was the one who tricked you. And then the wrath that comes upon him afterwards because of that. It's very, very iconic and very delightful, and it would be really fun to explore a retelling of that at some point in time. And I may just do that. But you don't even have to choose one of the monstrous encounters, although those would be very fun for anybody that enjoys fantasy to do. But there's the very, very human interactions. You can choose to do Odysseus and his first interactions with the swineherd, or with his nursemaid who finds his scar and all of that, or his son where he reveals his true identity, and they make schemes and plots and plans. Or in the case of Steve Donahue, Odysseus and his dog's reaction to identifying his master being home, and that heartbreaking scene that you just feel so bad for that dog who's just been abandoned and dealt with neglect, but who realizes without even having anything revealed that this is my master. That was a very, very Steve Donahue type scene. Steve, you can thank me later if you're inspired to write that, because I would love to see that. So I'm curious, what scenes jump out to people, and enough that they would say, hey, if I had the talent to write, or the time to write, or the desire to write, this is probably the scene that I would choose, and here's why. So thank you, and I hope you have a great weekend.